All right, folks, we're going to be talking about chapter 13 now, and this is another one of those weird chapters that really deals with a lot of important web concepts that don't necessarily directly relate to coding, but are very relevant to what we do as professional web developers. This chapter is focusing on web promotion, so largely we're talking about search engine results, SEO, and how you promote websites. Here are the objectives for the chapter. And you'll see the other thing that we talk about is iframes, which we've kind of already done, but we will revisit that pretty quickly. Now, they start with a discussion about search engines. And search engines are really important in today's society because you think about this, a lot of what we do when we sit down to a computer is we sit down, we bring up a browser, or we're on our phone, right? And what's the first thing we do? We Google something, right? In fact, it's become a verb to search. You know, searching online is synonymous with the word Google, which is really kind of strange, right? And you'll notice here, now these are dated results, but this is where the search engine traffic goes planet-wide. So like most internet searching goes to Google. Is Bing still a thing? I'm not even sure, right? But that was like a big thing when this book came out originally, and that was Microsoft's search platform called Bing. And then Yahoo is considered a search engine as well. And in the old days, Yahoo was kind of king of the hill for searching, and they weren't really even a search engine. They were more like a directory listing. But then there's this other weird one called Baidu. Does anybody know what Baidu is? Did I ever tell you guys what this is?
No.
You know, if you're wondering, and in fact, it's kind of fun to actually bring this site up, right? So if you type Baidu, and of course I misspelled it, but that's okay. It still brought it up, and there you go. This is the Chinese search engine. So why is it way up on the search rankings? Because Baidu is the primary search engine of China. So why is it the primary search engine of China? Because in China, they don't allow, guess what? Google. I don't know if that's still true, but Google is a big believer in like, hey, if you search something on the internet, we're going to show you the results, right? Hey, if you don't want to see like bad stuff, you can turn safe search on, and bad words and pornography and things like that will get filtered out. In China, that doesn't fly, right? The Chinese government, they are a communist dictatorship, right? We forget this, right? They control everything their people see. They have a master switch for the internet and control all traffic in and out of the country, and they can flip a switch and shut the whole thing off. And the last thing they want is people looking up information that is contrary to whatever they're trying to push upon their people, which is pretty sad in a sense. But that's how countries like that operate, So I think it's pretty interesting, in that regard. Search engine traffic is really important, and the amount of searching that people do is really kind of profound, because we've come to the point where in our browser, and I was kind of doing these examples before, when we're doing a search for whatever, and I know what the website address is, just, so for example, if I was going to go to Kohl'sDepartmentStore.com, I could just type Kohls.com and go to their webpage, right? But it's much more likely that I'm too lazy to type .com. That takes a whole lot of effort, right? I'll just type Kohls, press enter, and then go to their website, probably by clicking on the ad, but maybe by just clicking on the link. But it shows like a change in how we use the search engines, and Google kind of leverages this, right? So they know that a lot of people confuse the address bar with the search area, and then to confound that even more, the address bar on browsers now is the search area. So if you have like a default search engine attached to your address bar, it will automatically search. So if I don't type in a web address or an IP number, it's going to, just bring back the search results, is kind of the point. And that happens in the address bar automatically, and we take it for granted. Now, when stuff does come back from a search engine and it returns search results, so like I did a search here and I have search results. Why is it some stuff shows up on here? What is the driver for showing you about what ends up on the search engine? And I think this mystifies a lot of people. I think they think that, Google knows where everything is and they just show it to you. Well, okay, so how does Google figure that out? Well, they actually have pieces of software called robots, spiders, or crawlers, or a combo of all those things, that go out there, follow every known link on every known public-facing website, and then as they visit each page, they basically, whatever's on that page, it's like put into a database so that they can search it. And so when you're searching for certain keywords, it goes to the database, looks it up, and says, aha, all the stuff you're looking for is here. And then you follow the link and you go to it, right? So there's algorithms that they use. But most of it is the result of Google sending their software to surf the internet, to crawl your page, follow every link, and put the results into a database. So as long as your website is accessible publicly, you're going to get into that search engine. And here's kind of a thing that I think blows some students' minds. Eventually, even the work that you put here on Prometheus, eventually Google will find it. Isn't that interesting? Especially if you put it on your launch page. And once Google has access to your launch page, well, look at all these links it can follow. It's going to put all of this into its database. It's going to have like Java Jam 20 times over and Fish Creek and whatever. But that's how that software works. So we call that robot or spider software, or crawler software. But another thing that happens is they also sometimes start from an index or a database. And what people, I think, don't realize is that you can go to Google and put in the name of your business and tell them you exist and tell them where your website is, so they do include you in the search results. And a lot of places don't even do this, and because here's the truth of it, they don't know to do this. If I go back to Google and once again I search Kohl's, right, and I'm doing a search, not going to the website, and as I bring this up, do you notice, right, so they have the ad, they have the actual link, but do you ever notice like these sidebars that Google puts in? And this is what we call a Google business profile. And in fact, if you're a business owner, it would behoove you to go ahead and go to Google and set up a profile for your business so that you get this box, right? And it tells you all about the company. It might even give you reviews and other information, but these boxes do not happen automatically. We are looking at and I'm trying to remember the Salerno, that's what it was. So I was looking up this company. This is a Racine area company that does home building, and it was a company that we were looking at in terms of a potential project. And you'll notice that this business, when you look it up, okay, their website comes up just fine, but they don't have one of those boxes on the side. By comparison, here's a business, and this is a website that my students built, and I may have showed you this website in class here. So it's a Racine lawnmower repair place. My students built the initial website almost 10 years ago now. And one of the parts of the project that my students did is they went ahead and they created a Google business profile for him, and he has that box on the side. And you see all the information it gives you. So like when somebody's searching you, it brings up your website, you can get directions, you can call, you can save this, you can look at the reviews, phone number, hours of operation, all this stuff. And this is all verified by Google, which is why it's provided here. So whenever you see one of these sidebars in a search engine, it is based on a business profile that was submitted to the search engine. So someone had to go to Google, put in the business information, After the information was put in, Google sends a physical piece of mail to the person's street address, you know, here in Racine, and then there's instructions on it, and you go online, you follow the instructions, and then they validate that you're real, right? And once that happens, you get the sidebar, and it's supposedly a really big boost for business if you can get the sidebar. Compare it to the other company which didn't have that, and you know, they're kind of wondering, hey, why don't we get the traffic on our website that we want? Part of it is because of this. So you can, and this is really kind of the grand lesson here, with any of the search engines, you can go ahead and submit your stuff to the search engine. You don't have to wait for a piece of software to do it. Softwares typically will search for a lot of the typical things. The database, though, is set up in a sense so that you are manually adding an entry to the database so Google has a place to search. Without doing that, it might be a long time before you end up in Google. So a new business, starting a new website, you want to be found, you create a Google business profile, you go to every search engine you can think of, and you know the big ones really are Google, Bing, and Yahoo, and you provide your information to them. All of them have a form for doing it, and then you're in their database, and then Google will start indexing your stuff with their search engine and then pull up better and better results as it goes. What I think is kind of interesting about this is, you know, when you actually, you know, are working with search forms, you know, you're typically doing this. You're coming in here, typing in some keywords, you're hitting search, and it's pulling that stuff down from the database. But I always like to tell people that the stuff that you get in the search engine as results is the tip of the iceberg of the internet. So the only stuff that Google can search is the stuff that's in its database that you provide, or stuff it finds on the pages that you are linked up in its database. So like if I, you know, put in the gateway website to Google in their database, Google will start coming to the website and then start following every link everywhere, index all the pages on the gateway website. But if there's links to external websites, now that one's going to be included too, right? So you see how that happens. So if somebody's linking to you, fantastic, you know, because that means you'll probably get higher in the search rankings. But it's not an automatic process, and when you are doing the search, you're only searching what we call the surface web. So an example of that is, if you go to like Blackboard, for example, and you sign in, and you land on like your homepage, people who are not logged in would never see the content here or the courses, right? They have to log in. And let's face it, most of the information on the Blackboard website is after you log in. And so we call the searchable part of the internet, we call that the surface web. And then anything that is beyond a login is called the deep web. Not to be confused with the dark web. The deep web means you got to log in, or you got to have access, or you have to have credentials to see the content. The dark web is a completely different kind of construct altogether. We're not really focusing on that right now because it's not really critical. I think it's pretty interesting though, like if you actually try this, that when you do searches online, there's information that pops up on the screen, and some of it can be controlled with the stuff that you put on the page. So usually the first words on the page will be the ones that come back in the search results, unless you set up a meta tag called keywords where you control those words that end up in the search box. And I think that's pretty interesting. And to show you that in action, I think that Wheels Small Engine Repair, if I go to this website, so I want you to notice this. We do a search for the company, we find it. In the search results, it says small engine repair in Racine, Wisconsin, right? Repairs. 2 and 4 cycle engine repair, from restringing a rope to pulling a full engine rebuild, and etc. How do those words end up on the page? Well, let's go to their website and take a look. Right, so first we'll get out to regular zoom level here, and then we'll come in here and take a look. But you'll notice up here at the top this collection of meta tags. So one is the description of the website, and then the keywords. And the keywords are a collection of words separated by commas, all different sorts of spellings. So if you like follow this out, there's a whole bunch of them. So the thinking is, if somebody's searching for this, this is what will come back in the search results screen. These words here, the description will be the first words that appear in the search results here. Isn't that cool, right? Where do the rest of the words come from? Well, if you look back at their, I actually could go back into the page. Here you go. The first words on the page are the ones that pop in. And I think that's pretty fascinating when it comes down to it. So the first words you put on the page are really important, is the point. You notice how it says repairs and then 2 and 4 cycle engine repair. Is that what you want to come back in your search result? Maybe. Maybe that is. Maybe it's not. But you do have some level of control via the description and the meta tags and the words on the page as to what appears here. Sometimes those words make all the difference in somebody clicking on the link or not clicking on the link, by the way. So it's something that's worthy of giving some time and thought to as you're building a page.
I have a question, by the way. If I
yes,
can.
Go ahead.
So my question is, because SEO is obviously businesses pay for that service. Is this something that is in the educational space as far as certification, or where would you find a specialist for that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And the reason that's a good question is because there's no clear answer to it at all. Yes, there are companies that will gladly take your hard-earned money to work up your SEO and make it better, right? And real frankly, with very mixed results, you know. Sometimes the reason you don't come up real high in search engine results is just because of the product or service that you're selling. So for example, I always use coffee as an example, because if I'm sitting in the city of Racine and I type coffee Racine, what results do you think are going to come back? Gosh, everybody sells coffee, if you see what I mean, right? Yeah, Starbucks, you would think, Dunkin' Donuts, maybe McDonald's, you know, maybe the grocery store. It depends, right? But if you're opening up a fresh store, how do you get on that first page of search results? Chances are, and I'm sorry to say this to coffee shops, you're not. It's not gonna, you can pay a company big money for SEO, but Starbucks is still gonna come up first. You know, and that's the sad truth of it. But if you have a more normal page, and I think that small engine repair place is a good example, when this guy came to us to build his site, and I think this is a great story, because this is the guy right here, right? And I think maybe I've told you this story, but he was a guy that was kind of a gearhead guy, and he used to race motorcycles and cars. He got in a bad car accident, got disabled, learned how to fix motors, and then opened up this business. When he came to us, he had just started the business, and frankly, had no web presence. And in the city of Racine, if you would type lawnmower repair Racine, Wisconsin, for example, like that, you notice how he comes up right now? He comes up first. Now, that's not an accident, right? Because I've searched this place many times, so it's going to come up first. But in the old days, it was always this place that came up first. And in fact, in the actual search results, Central Saw and Mower still comes up first. But he went from not even being on the map, literally, to coming up here pretty near the top without typing anything specific. He's fourth result. That's pretty darn good, and good enough to bring him business. The thinking is on Google, if you can land on the first page of results, you're going to get traffic. Very few people will scroll down and go to the next page. Very, very, very few people.
But also the keyword search, right? That's another aspect of it that there's just so many important components. That's why I feel like this is an underserved skill that needs education or proper certification behind it, just to make it a well-rounded skill set, if that makes sense.
Yeah, The certification piece, I'm not sure that that will ever happen. And the reason is because Google changes the game all the time, and they're kind of in control, right? A really good example of this is about 5, 6, 7 years back. Google made an announcement that if you wanted to rank high in their search engine, your page had to be mobile ready. So your mobile phone should be able to look at that page comfortably without having to jump through weird hoops or anything. And if your site did not have, mobile capability, Google was like, whatever, you're irrelevant. Now, why did Google do that? Because Google knew at that time that already most people search on their phones. So why on earth would they rank somebody high if you can't even pull up their page on their phone? It doesn't make sense, right? So it's those types of things. So yeah, it is a skill that people pay big money for, Vidal, absolutely. And it can be a whole niche of a career for people. I often, when I do client work, and I still on occasion do that, one thing that clients do come to me a lot about is this issue. It's like, hey, we got this website, nobody's coming to our page. What's up? How do we make them come to our page? Why we can't make them come to the page? Ultimately, what puts you at the top of a search engine result is the validity of who you are. So the fact that Keith's small engine repair company is showing up is because he's a real business. If he wasn't, it would never happen. But also because of the way we put the page together, partially. The fact that he has that profile, that has that side box, the fact that we put the keywords, in there, so when Google searches, they search those keywords. They look through this list basically of keywords, and you can see the stuff in there. Repair happens all the time, so it's like blah blah, weed whacker, chainsaw, edgers, snow blowers, whatever, we just threw it all in there, right? So if people are searching for those things and they're in Racine, there's a good chance it will come up. Another thing I think that throws people, real frankly, when it comes to search results, is the fact that search results are based upon your Google login, who you are when you're logged into your browser or your Google accounts, and where you're located. So like if you're in Wisconsin and I type, lawnmower repair, I don't want results from California, right? Or if you're in Racine and you search pizza, and then you come to Milwaukee and search pizza, if your location services are turned on, you should get very different results. So it's somewhat qualified. Now, here are the tips, right, that our author gives about doing this. And so keywords that we just showed you in meta tags are pretty important, but also how you put them on the page is important. Some people even use a strategy of like putting in the misspellings of words in their keyword results, because somebody might not know how to spell repair and might spell repair like R-E-P-A-R-E. Just for example, and clever SEO people put the misspelling in too, because they capture that, right? So hey, if I have somebody that doesn't know how to spell repair, we'll get that guy, and it's a strategy, believe it or not. They give you some tips here about how long your description should be, and it says some search engines will display your description in that blurb you see on the screen, and we saw evidence of that. Google does that, definitely. The big one really for driving SEO is what we call the description tag and the keyword tag. So here's an example, right, of a description tag. In place of value, we would put in like the words, so for example, we would do something like this: content, and then you put, this is what I want to show up in Google. Make it meaningful, concise, business name forward. Business name should probably be the first thing in there. If you're looking, taking this a little bit farther, you also should look at the stuff on your pages. So your page title, what you have in the title tag up at the top. The text on the page should have your keywords in it, etc. That helps significantly. So what the actual content is, and then like if you have heading tags on your page, like H1, H2, H3, etc., that those include the keywords of the content of the page. So if you have a section about snow blowers, maybe the section should be called snow blowers or snowblower repair, and that will help draw traffic. Google prioritizes heading tags for content. It looks at those. Another thing that helps too is having a lot of people that link to you, right? That helps, but also how you're kind of putting your stuff on the page. So it includes how you're controlling the layout of the page. They suggest that you use CSS for layout. That helps. That's kind of a given, I think, these days. But whenever you put in images in multimedia, why not? Don't name the image like the name that came off your camera, which might be today's date and some gobbledygook numbers. Change the file name to say, Joe's Burgers, for example. Or if you put in a title tag or an alt tag for an image or multimedia, that it also includes the keywords that would drive traffic to it. So, like for example, if you had a video of Joe cooking a burger, maybe the alt tag should say Joe's Burger, a video of Joe making a burger. For as goofy as that sounds, that would help draw traffic. So that's real common sense type of stuff. Have the words on the page draw the attention. Google searches not only the contents, but the alt tags and the title tags and the file names of the stuff that you're linking to. So I think that helps significantly. Another thing that makes you rank higher, right? So here's another reason to validate your code. If your code's valid, Google ranks you higher because they figure, hey, you know what you're doing, you're real, right? If you have mistakes all over the place, it's like, well, this is a newbie, whatever, good luck, and you drop way down. So make sure your code's valid, makes a big difference. I think that the other thing that's important, and we don't say this out loud so much, is to follow good design practices. So you don't want to create a website that's got like a navigation structure that you can't find, right? Or there's no clear organization to the website. Like there's no sense as to why you have certain things on some page and other things on the other page. If the stuff is well organized, it's well put together, that will also improve all your search rankings. Now, in terms of doing the SEO and publicizing your site, they have some important tips. And the first one I think is pretty important. Wait until your site is finished. You don't want to promote a site to Google if it's not done. Like, hey, I've got a bunch of empty pages. Why don't you put this in your search engine? There are a bunch of empty pages. Why would we put that in our search engine? Google wants to put in its search engine real results. So have something real for people to look at, then list it on Google. And notice it says, don't submit under construction websites. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and there are actually directions. So like there's spots on Google, and Google's the most notable one, where you go and submit your link and make sure that like your homepage is listed. And if you have really important sub pages, you can list those too. And basically you fill out their forms. Once you fill out the form, their software will search your site automatically and follow all your links. And then notice what it says here, allow several weeks and test the search engine to see if your site is listed. In the old days of SEO, sometimes you'd have to wait as long as 3 or 4 months before you would be indexed. These days, it's usually a few days. But it does take a little bit of time because it has to read in all the results and then convert that into database entries that are then searchable. So when you search Google, you're searching a database of their search results that they've already done, right? It's not like it's going out at that moment and then searching the web. That's not what it's doing. It's searching the database of stuff they've already searched. So that's why they keep running their software continuously. If you do want to drive traffic to your site, there are other ways. So one thing would be like what we saw with Kohl's. Like when I did the Kohl's thing, and once again, I'm trying not to get the .com in there, and you search for it, they pay, and you notice here it says ad, right? So this is an ad they're paying for. Why? So if you type Kohl's, they're at the top. What are you going to click on? You're going to click on Kohl's, right? Even though the next link is them without paying for it, because that's just what comes up. It's a valid site. But if I click on this one, Kohl's is now paying a fee for the advertising to be up at the top, and that's called a cost per click or pay per click. And I don't know what fee they're garnering now, but every time somebody's clicking that, Kohl's is paying something. It might be like 1/100 of a penny or 1/10 of a penny or something like that, but they are paying money for that. Now, why do people do that? Because, you know, frankly, it works. If you can be at the top of Google, doesn't matter if it's an ad or a real link, somebody's going to click on it. Traffic's coming to your site. You get enough people coming to your site, somebody's going to buy something. And so that's why people are real big on that. There's also like these other metrics which are kind of interesting. So if you kind of dig deep into SEO and study this, you will notice that there's kind of like, what does it cost us that, you know, for every 1,000 times that your ad is displayed on a web page? So for example, and I noticed this is kind of interesting, like during one of our breaks here, I brought up Facebook and I logged in, and of course, right, when you look at the ads that come up, so you get some real content, and then usually you get an ad. Okay, I'm not trying to clean my intestines here, but the last time I logged in, it brought up an advertising for hosting. I'm like, how did that happen? Well, I was searching hosting in Google, so it figures, hey, that's what I'm into. So it's searching that. They also have what they call a click-through rate. So number of times you click on an ad, and then people actually come through to your website. You know, and that's kind of an important metric for this kind of stuff. There are some, you know, concerns from some people that people are kind of getting savvy to the ads and trying not to click on them. But the reality is sometimes you even accidentally click on the ads. And I don't know if that's ever happened to you. Like you're on a website or whatever, and then your hand bumps the mouse and you're clicking on an ad and you didn't want to, and you're there. Okay, well, that happens. You can also kind of help facilitate some of this search traffic by creating what we call a sitemap. Now the author does have a sample one, so let's actually click through and go look at theirs. So here's an example of a sitemap for her website, and what it is, basically, it's a page that has links to all the pages that are on the website. This is a real primitive example because it's for an older version of their book, but this is kind of like a menu of all the pages on the website, and then if Google hits this, well, now they have everything to index. And so it's kind of a strategy. That can be done either by just creating a basic HTML page, or in some platforms you create a separate kind of file called an XML file that has a list of all those web pages in a different type of format, but basically does the same thing. It tells Google where all the stuff is located, and Google actually has entire articles about how to maximize that. And so in some cases, when you submit your stuff to Google, they look at your sitemap to index your whole site. And I think that's pretty interesting. Now, we are kind of running out of a little bit of time here, but my goal is I'm going to go ahead and finish off the slides, whether you guys stay in the session or not. I'm just letting you know that. So you're welcome to stay, or if you have to go, that's up to you. But my recording is going to continue. Now, the other thing that kind of really becomes kind of interesting is there's a whole field that's related to SEO called analytics, and we talk about web analytics, and once again, the real big player here is Google. Google has a product called Google Analytics, and the way that it operates is it takes a little piece of JavaScript code that drops on every one of your pages, and every time your page gets visited, that JavaScript code sends information to Google, and it puts it in a database, and it gives you a report afterwards. What a lot of people don't realize is that most commercial web hosts provide that information for free anyhow, without any extra cost, but people tend to like the Google tools better. Now, one real big aspect of analytics is looking at what search terms are put in to draw traffic to the website. And what the author did here is, this is kind of a snapshot of one of their analytics results, where this author was looking at what search traffic brought people to my website for this textbook. And so these are the top key search phrases: web design best practices, web development and design foundations, which is the name of the book, basics of web design, etc., etc., etc. And it shows you how many visits were based upon that search traffic, how many pages they looked at per visit. So maybe they looked at a page or two, and then how long they stayed on the website. So you notice, even though this got a lot of hits, they only looked at a page or two and then left after a minute. But a minute's pretty good, actually, right? Then this next one, you know, where they just removed the S from the search, for whatever reason, almost as much traffic, but now they're looking at 6 pages for some reason, and they're staying on the website a lot longer. Who knows why, right? Now, when you look at these kind of results, you know, the one thing that will pop into your head is like, well, hey, people are looking for this, and this brings them to the website. I can leverage that, right? So if a lot of people are looking for that, I can make sure that on whatever page they're landing on, it gives the information about all the other stuff I'm selling too. And so this is where you have to get kind of clever. As you change stuff on your website, you want to check what people are searching to get to your website, because it can help to drive traffic. What's helpful, right, is that you're selling or providing a service that is unique that others don't. You know, so I'll use the coffee example again. Everybody sells coffee, so if you're searching for coffee, chances are people aren't coming to your website based on that search term. However, if you have like a special coffee, let's say it's like, you know, nuclear coffee with chocolate spices or something like that, then you can leverage that in your search results if people are really in tune to it. The other thing that's kind of interesting is there's a couple of websites where you can actually visit, you know, these tools and see how popular your website is in terms of, you know, your link popularity, and they have a couple of different tools here that you can check. But one thing that really does draw a lot of traffic to websites, folks, is social media. Social media, for many website designers now, is kind of like a secondary add-on. So a lot of people that do web design will also help people with the social media, or at least take that social media and add links to the main website, because you can use social media to draw traffic to your website. Really big and effective way. Why do people, like every retail store you walk into, why do they say like visit us on Facebook? Because it works. You know, that's really kind of the short answer. It drives traffic to their website, so they have been digging into that pretty deeply. Other ways that you can draw traffic, real frankly, you know, is like you can do things like if you ever pick up a product and there's a QR code on it, and I'm looking at my can of iced tea here, I might ask, nope, no QR code on that. I think my bag of M&Ms does. Aha, my M&Ms bag has a QR code on it, and that's a way to bring people to a website. There are agreements that you can make with other websites, or you can go into these kind of conglomerated services where people exchange links. I'm not a big fan of that, right? I don't want to put a link to somebody else's website on mine, but some sites do that, right? And they get money for it every time somebody clicks on it. So that's something to think about. A lot of different ways to promote yourself, frankly. You know, so there's nothing wrong with having, like, if you have a company or a business or an organization, with having like a email newsletter, or you know, public forums or groups or FAQs, or whatever you have, any way that you can get your stuff out there and promoted. If you guys have never seen a QR code or not sure what that is, and when I say it, well, here's an image of one. And a QR code is kind of a weird thing. Like, for most of us nowadays, you can take your smartphone, turn on the camera, point it at that QR code. Your camera will recognize that it's a QR code, and usually brings up a little screen that says, click here to go to the website or the app or whatever. And really all a QR code is a way to put a web link, is really all it is, in a different format that your phone can recognize and read. If you ever wanted to create a QR code, there are lots of apps that do it for free. In fact, you can just search QR code generator on Google and you'll find a whole bunch of them. Here's some popular ones if you want to try that. It's kind of a fun thing. But if you, let's say, had a retail store and you had certain information about a product, you could put a QR code on the shelf. People could take a picture of that and pull it up. I've also been to restaurants lately where, you know, they don't want you touching their menus because of the pandemic or whatever, and they just have a QR code on the table. You just snap it, look at the menu on your phone. Okay, that's the way to do it. So that's one of the interesting aspects. All right, from here I'm going to jump over to slide number 29 where we start to talk about iframes. We did do this last week, so if you look at, I think it's our chapter 11 video where we're adding multimedia, towards the end of that we start talking about iframes. I'm just going to talk about it here in principle and show you on my page what we did. An iframe is basically a way to create a portion of your website with a certain size. So there's a height and a width tag in here in pixels. And it creates a box on your screen where you can feed in the content from any external web page or website into that area of your web page. A real common usage for iframe is to embed YouTube videos. So that was the thing I was demonstrating in that video. And that is really kind of the key way, I think, to put YouTube videos on a website. You don't want to have to go through the trouble of downloading it, converting it, putting it in a folder, and then using a regular video tag. It's so much easier to use an iframe. Whenever you are using an iframe, though, please keep this in mind, that you are putting on your page, a portion of your screen is being fed from an external page or website. You can feed local pages into iframes, but most typically we use external pages to do that. My basic little example on that would be is if you look at what I did last week with, once again, with the multimedia, these YouTube pieces here, if you look at the source code on these, all of these are iframes, right? So all the YouTube videos are iframes. And then just as an additional example, I also created an iframe where instead of using a YouTube video, I just created one that was 800 by 600 and dropped in the NFL website into that space, which you can see down here at the bottom. So this is actually an external website feeding into a portion of my page. Not the prettiest thing in the world, granted, but it shows the proof of concept that it is possible. So you can use that in a number of different ways. Iframes, one way that they're particularly useful is if you're using it on local files, is you can give maybe somebody access to one particular page they can edit, but they don't get access to edit the whole website. And then you can feed that page in manually and you don't have to worry about them blowing up your website. So that's a really kind of cool feature. Most often, though, it is used for doing video embeds like this, but on occasion for feeding in external websites. All right, folks, that wraps up chapter 13. So this video and